Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, a really fascinating challenge. Creating humanoid robots that aren't just machines, but, truly general-purpose partners. It's about building not just the body, but the mind, the intelligence they need to work in our world. And things are definitely heating up on the hardware front, but it's the AI advancements that make it feel like we're getting closer.
Absolutely. Feels like a real convergence point now.
Yeah.
We've got more capable robots, much smarter AI, and crucially, the sheer compute power to actually make it all work together. And right at the center of a lot of this excitement is NVIDIA's GR00T N1. That's what we're diving into today.
GR00T N1. Okay, big name. And it sounds like a big deal. So for everyone needing the quick version, the 1-minute rundown, what's the core idea?
Okay, quick summary. GR00T N1 is a vision language action model, a VLA. It uses this cool dual system architecture.
Dual system, like two brains working together.
Kind of. System 2 is a vision language module. It sees the world, understands language commands, figures out what to do, runs fairly deliberately.
Okay, the planner.
Yeah.
And system 1?
System 1 is the action part. It's a diffusion transformer module, and its job is to generate smooth, fluid movements in real time, the how. It listens to System 2, runs much faster.
And how do they teach it?
That's key. It's trained end-to-end using this really diverse mix of data. Real robot movements, videos of humans doing things, even synthetic data generated by computer.
A bit of everything.
Exactly. And the result is pretty impressive. It beats the standard imitation learning methods in simulations, and more importantly, it shows strong real-world performance on a humanoid. It can handle language instructions for tricky two-handed tasks, and it learns really efficiently from limited data.
Okay, that sets the stage nicely. So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the technical details behind GR00T N1. This is aimed squarely at you AI researchers, ML engineers out there. We want to get into the nitty-gritty, but keep it, understandable and hopefully interesting too.
Yep.
Okay, so the paper starts by acknowledging this long-standing dream, right? Robots just working alongside us in everyday places. And they bring up this idea of a full-stack solution. What does that mean in this context?
Yeah, the full stack idea is really important here. It highlights that we're finally at a point where progress in 3 key areas is coming together.
3 areas.
Right. First, the actual robot hardware, the mechanics, the sensors, the actuators, it's all getting much more sophisticated.
Okay, better bodies.
Second, the AI side. The algorithms for perception, for control, for planning huge leaps there.
Got smarter brains.
And third, maybe the unsung hero, is the accelerated computing. We just have the raw power now, the GPUs and infrastructure, to train these huge models and run them effectively.
So full stack means it's not just about the robot or just the AI.
Exactly. It's about the tight integration of all 3. The hardware platform, the AI models running on it, and the data that fueled those models. You need all pieces working together seamlessly for truly general-purpose autonomy.
Makes sense. Now, why the big focus on humanoid robots? There are tons of different robot designs out there.
That's a good point. And specialized robots definitely have their place. But humanoids offer this inherent versatility because, well, our world is built for humans.
Right. Doors, tools, kitchens.
Precisely. Homes, workplaces, tools. They're designed for human hands, human reach, human locomotion. A humanoid robot, just by its form factor, is potentially much better equipped to navigate and interact in these environments using the same tools we do. It's about adaptability across a huge range of tasks.
But that versatility creates its own massive challenge, right? Building an AI that can control such a complex body to do, well, almost anything.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's the core AI challenge. The paper talks about needing models capable of open-ended objectives.
Meaning not just pre-programmed tasks.
Exactly. The robot needs to understand goals, maybe vague ones, and figure out how to achieve them, adapting to unexpected things. It needs to generalize, not just repeat.
Which sounds like it needs an unbelievable amount of training data. And getting real-world data for a complex humanoid must be incredibly hard. It's not like scraping the web for text.
You're absolutely right. That's a huge bottleneck. Real-world data collection for humanoids is slow, it's expensive, you need the actual hardware, supervision, maintenance. It just doesn't scale easily like web data. This scarcity is a major roadblock.
Okay, so hardware's tough, AI is tough, data is tough, seems tricky, but then the paper shifts to talk about foundation models. How do they fit in?
Yeah, this is where they draw a really interesting parallel. Think about the revolution we saw in, say, language processing with LLMs or in computer vision. These huge models, trained on massive data sets, become a foundation.
Right, like GPT or CLIP. You pre-train them once, then adapt them for lots of specific things.
Exactly. The hope is to do something similar for robotics. Create a foundational robot brain that understands the physical world, movement, interaction, a backbone of intelligence.
So this foundation model could generalize better, learn new skills faster, maybe needing less task-specific data.
That's the core idea. It provides a starting point, a base level of competence, so the robot isn't learning everything from scratch every time. It's about enabling generalization and faster adaptation.
The data problem doesn't just disappear, right? The paper mentions the data island issue.
Yeah.
We don't have a single massive internet of robot data.
Precisely. That's the key difference. Robot data is fragmented. You've got data from different robots with different sensors, different arms, different control schemes. It's all siloed.
Different embodiments.
Exactly. Different embodiments. So you can't just easily pool it all together like text or images.
Yeah.
Initiatives like OpenX Embodiment are trying to bridge this, learning across different robot types. But it's still a major challenge due to the sheer physical diversity.
Okay, enter GR00T N1, a vision language action model designed specifically for this. And you mentioned earlier it has cross-embodiment support. Why is that so significant?
It's huge because it means the model isn't rigidly tied to one specific robot's body plan or sensors. The fact that GR00T N1 can work on tabletop arms and complex humanoids is a big step towards that generalist goal. The underlying intelligence is potentially more transferable.
And they talk about this dual system compositional architecture, inspired by Kahneman's System 1 and System 2 thinking. How does that map onto the robot?
Yeah, it's a really neat framing. So System 2 is the analog for that slower, more deliberate conscious thought. In GR00T N1, this is handled by a pre-trained vision language model, NVIDIA's Eagle 2.
The VLM we talked about.
Right. It runs at about 10 hertz, so 10 times a second. It processes the camera feeds, understands language instructions. Basically, it figures out the task goal, the overall, what are we trying to do here?
Okay, System 2 understands the goal, then System 1 takes over, the faster, intuitive part.
Exactly. System 1 is the fast reactive system. It's a diffusion transformer trained with this technique called action flow matching. It runs way faster, 120 hertz.
120 times a second, wow.
Yeah, so it can generate those smooth, real-time motor commands. Crucially, it gets input or conditioning from System 2. So the goal understanding guides the action generation. And it uses specific encoders and decoders tailored to the robot's particular embodiment, its joints, sensors, etc.
So System 2 says, put the apple in the bowl, and System 1 generates the actual joint movements for that specific robot to reach, grasp, move, and release the apple smoothly.
Perfect analogy. And what's really important is that both systems are transformer-based. They're not totally separate black boxes. They're tightly coupled and actually trained together end-to-end. That joint optimization is key for coordination.
Okay, that makes sense. Now back to the data island problem. How does this data pyramid strategy they propose help bridge that gap?
The data pyramid is their strategy for dealing with the fact that they have different kinds of data in vastly different quantities. It's structured in layers.
Okay, like a food pyramid, but for robot data, what's at the base?
Exactly. The base is the widest layer. It's massive amounts of general data, web images, text, and crucially, lots of videos of humans doing things, general visual and behavioral knowledge.
So learning about objects, physics, how humans move, even if it's not robot specific.
Right. Broad priors. Then the middle layer is synthetic data.
Generated data.
Yep. Generated using physics simulations, or increasingly using other neural networks to create realistic-looking robot or human interaction videos. This layer helps bridge the gap between the general web data and specific robot control.
And the top, the smallest layer.
That's the real-world robot data, data collected from actual robots performing tasks. It's the most valuable, most direct data, but also the hardest and most expensive to get. So it's the smallest layer at the top.
So it learns general stuff, then simulated robot stuff, then refines with real robot stuff. But how do they actually use all this together? Especially the human videos without robot actions.
That's one of the really clever parts. They have a co-training strategy across the pyramid. For the data without explicit robot actions like human videos or some generated videos, they use a couple of tricks.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
First, they learn something called a latent action codebook. Think of it like learning an abstract representation of action directly from video frames. They train a model, a VQVAE, to basically predict the next frame given the current frame and this compressed latent action.
So it learns a kind of universal action language from pixels.
Sort of, yes. And second, they train an inverse dynamics model, or IDM. This model learns to predict what robot actions would likely cause the observed visual changes between two frames. So they can apply this IDM to human videos and generate plausible pseudo-actions.
Whoa. So they can essentially label human videos with inferred robot actions.
Exactly. It's a way to leverage that vast amount of human video data for robot training. By doing this, they can unify all these diverse data sources, real robot, synthetic, pseudo-labeled human video, into a consistent format. State plus vision plus language instruction leads to action.
That's incredibly smart. And they train the whole GR00T N1 model end-to-end on this unified multi-source data set.
Yes. The pre-training uses data from all three layers of the pyramid. And the result is a single model, a single set of weights that can generate diverse manipulation behaviors across different robots.
And you mentioned they're releasing the model, the data, the benchmarks.
They are. The GR0T N1 to be checkpoint, key training data sets, and simulation environments are being made available. It's a really significant contribution to the community.
Definitely. Okay, let's zoom in a bit on the model architecture itself. Figures 2 and 3 in the paper give a visual. We know it's VLA, VLM plus diffusion transformer.
Right. So the VLM backbone is NVIDIA Eagle 2. The specific public model, GR0000T N1 to be, has 2.2 billion parameters in total.
That's hefty.
It is, but a big chunk, 1.34 billion, is in that pre-trained VLM. And performance-wise, is pretty efficient. On an L40 GPU using BF16 precision, it can run inference process inputs and generate 16 future action steps in just under 64 milliseconds.
Pretty quick. So tell me more about this Eagle 2 VLM. It's pre-trained on internet data.
Yeah, Eagle 2 itself is built on other foundation models, a language model called SmallLM2 and an image encoder called SIGLIP2. It's been trained on huge web-scale data sets of images and text together.
So it already has a strong general understanding of vision and language. How does GR00T N1 use it? Does it feed the robot's camera view straight in?
Pretty much. The image encoder part takes the camera images 224 by 224 resolution. These get processed into a sequence of image tokens. These tokens, along with the text instruction tokens, go into the language model part of the VLM.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, for controlling the robot, they don't use the final output layer of the VLM. Instead, they extract embeddings from an intermediate layer, the 12th layer in this case. They found this actually worked better and was faster for the downstream robotics task.
Huh, that is interesting, using the middle representation. Okay, now, System 1, the diffusion transformer or DIT module, it generates the motion. You mentioned flow matching.
Yes. It's a variant of the diffusion transformer architecture, specifically adapted for generating action sequences. The core idea is iterative denoising.
Denoising, like starting with noise and cleaning it up.
Exactly. During inference, you start with random noise representing the action sequence, and the model iteratively refines it over a few steps. They found K4 steps works well to produce the final, clean action sequence. The flow matching part is the specific loss function used during training to teach the model how to perform this denoising effectively.
And how does it connect to the VLM's understanding?
Through attention mechanisms. The DIT has blocks that alternate between self-attention, processing the action state information, and cross-attention. The cross-attention blocks allow the DIT to look at those VLM embeddings we just talked about.
Ah, so the VLM output guides the denoising process.
Precisely. It conditions the action generation on the visual perception and language understanding from System 2. Then, after the DIT blocks, there's a final embodiment-specific decoder, basically an MLP, that translates the denoised representation into the actual joint commands or end effector targets for that specific robot.
Got it. VLM understands, provides context via embeddings. DIT uses that context to denoise random actions into goal-directed robot movements. Very cool. Now let's talk more about generating that training data pyramid, especially the synthetic and human video parts.
Right. So for the human videos and the neurally generated videos where you don't have robot actions, they use those latent actions we touched on. They train a VQVAE model. Its encoder learns to compress the visual change between frames into a discrete code, a latent action.
So the latent action represents what movement happened visually.
Kind of, yes. And they can treat this latent action code as the action label for a special virtual robot embodiment they call LAPA. This lets them train the policy using these actionless videos.
Clever. And neural trajectories, using AI to generate more training data.
Exactly. They fine-tuned existing large-scale image-to-video generation models on their own collected human teleoperation data.
So they taught the video models what robot manipulation looks like.
Yep. And then they could give these fine-tuned models new text prompts, like move the blue block to the red bowl, maybe with an initial image, and the model would generate a whole new video of the robot performing that action. This massively augmented their data, creating about 827 hours worth.
Wow. How do they ensure the quality? AI generation can be weird sometimes.
Good question. They used another powerful multimodal LLM as a judge. It would look at frames from the generated video and the prompt to check if the action made sense and followed the instruction. They filtered out bad ones and used the LLM to write better captions for the good ones.
A multi-stage AI pipeline just to generate training data. Impressive. And the simulation data. DexMimogen.
Right. DexMimogen is a framework for taking a small number of human demonstrations in simulation and automatically generating a huge number of variations. It decomposes a task, adapts it to new object placements or environments, and verifies success.
So high-volume automated simulation data generation.
Extremely high volume. They generated something like 780,000 simulation trajectories, which is roughly 6,500 hours of equivalent demonstration time in just 11 hours of compute.
That's insane scaling. So the full pre-training data set is this mix of real robot data, their own, plus OpenX and Agibot, tons of DexMimogen simulation data, the neurally generated trajectories, and those human video data sets labeled with latent actions or IDM pseudo-actions.
Exactly, a massive diverse collection mapped onto that pyramid structure. You can see the breakdown in Table 1 and 7 in the paper. It's quite extensive. They use data sets like Ego4D, Epic Kitchens, Assembly 101 for the human video part.
Okay, so they've built the model, gathered this incredible data set. How do they actually test how well it works? The evaluation?
They evaluated it thoroughly, both in simulation and on the real Fourier GR-1 humanoid robot. The key goal was showing how well it could acquire new skills from just a few human demonstrations after the initial pre-training, so testing its generalization and data efficiency.
Makes sense. What were the simulation benchmarks?
They used three main ones. RoboCasa Kitchen, which involves tasks with a Franca Emica Panda arm in a kitchen environment. The DexMimogen Cross-Embodiment Suite, using simulated bimanual pandas and the GR1 humanoid for diverse manipulation tasks. And finally, a set of GR1 tabletop tasks designed to closely mirror their real-world experiments.
So testing on different robots and different kinds of manipulation challenges in simulation.
Right. Tasks like pick and place, container rearrangement, interacting with articulated objects like drawers and faucets, even bimanual coordination tasks.
And how did GR00T N1 do against other methods in sim? They compared it to BC transformer and diffusion policy.
Yes. And GR00T N1 consistently outperformed both baselines across all the simulation benchmarks, especially when trained with limited demonstration data, like 30 or 100 demos per task. The improvement was particularly noticeable on the GR1 simulation tasks.
Okay, promising sim results, but the real world is always trickier. What were the real robot tests?
They set up a series of tabletop tasks for the GR1 humanoid. They grouped them into simple pick and place into containers, articulated object interaction, like putting something in a storage box and closing it, industrial-style tasks involving tools or structured workflows, and even multi-agent tasks requiring coordination between two robots.
Examples of the industrial or coordination tasks.
Industrial included things like packing machinery parts, pouring carefully from a mesh cup, or handing over a cylinder. Coordination involved one robot putting something in a cup, handing the cup to a second robot, which then placed the object and poured out the rest.
Sounds complex for a robot. How is the data for these tasks collected?
Through human teleoperation, using systems like VIV trackers and sensor gloves. It took anywhere from 15 minutes to 3 hours per task to collect the demonstration data, and they filtered out low-quality attempts.
And the results on the real robot, how did GR00T N1 stack up?
The real-world results were really strong. GR00T N1 to be significantly beat the diffusion policy baseline across all task categories. And this is the key part. GR00T N1 trained on only 10% of the collected demonstration data often performed nearly as well as, or sometimes even better than, the diffusion policy baseline trained on the full data set.
Wow, okay, that really underscores the data efficiency point. Learning complex skills from way less real-world data.
Exactly. That's potentially a huge practical advantage.
Did adding those neurally generated trajectories help in the real-world training too?
Yes, they found that co-training with the neural trajectories using the IDM pseudo-action labels provided substantial gains, particularly on the real-world pick-and-place and industrial tasks.
And just watching the robot qualitatively, did GR00T N1 look better, smoother motion, more reliable?
Yes. The paper includes qualitative comparisons. GR00T N1 generally showed much smoother, more coordinated movements, and significantly higher grasping accuracy. The baseline diffusion policy, in contrast, sometimes just froze or made clumsy, inaccurate grasp attempts. GR00T N1 also seemed better at following the nuances of language instructions and generalizing, like figuring out that bimanual apple transfer you mentioned earlier.
Okay, sounds like a really solid performance overall, but no research is perfect. What limitations did the authors acknowledge?
They're upfront about it. The current work is mainly focused on relatively short horizon tasks happening on a tabletop. They haven't really tackled long-range navigation combined with manipulation, yet loco manipulation.
Right, walking around and doing things.
Exactly. That requires advances across the board, hardware, models, data. They also see room for improvement in the VLM's reasoning capabilities, enhancing the synthetic data generation further, more diversity, better physics, and exploring entirely new model architectures and pre-training methods for even better robustness and generalization.
So still lots of exciting future work to do. How does this GR0T N1 paper fit into the broader landscape? What related work did they discuss?
They situate it within a few key areas. First, foundation models in robotics, highlighting their approach of fine-tuning a powerful VLM Eagle 2 and integrating it tightly with the action generation, flow matching DIT with cross-attention, contrasting it with methods that might only use pre-trained models for high-level planning or use different integration techniques.
Okay.
Second, datasets for robot learning. They cover the spectrum from real robot teleup to instrumented human demos to human videos, emphasizing their strategy of combining all these types, including the novel use of latent actions and IDM pseudo-actions for human video data.
And third,
synthetic data generation. They acknowledge the value of simulation, but also the sim-to-real gap, and they highlight their large-scale use of neural generative models, the image-to-video models, to create synthetic trajectories, which they argue is a key differentiator in their work compared to other VLA efforts.
it really feels like they pulled together several cutting-edge threads: foundation, VLMs, diffusion models, diverse data sources, advanced synthetic data generation.
Absolutely. It's a synthesis of many recent advancements applied very effectively to the humanoid robotics challenge. They also mention some interesting training details in the appendix, like adding an auxiliary object detection loss during training to help the model better understand object locations.
Ah, using OWLv2 for object detection loss.
Yeah.
Smart. And more details on the neural trajectory generation and IDM training.
Yes, specifics about fine-tuning the video model, the LLM-based filtering and recaptioning process, and how they trained the separate inverse dynamics model used for pseudo-labeling. There's also detail on their standardized data format, LeRobot, and extensions they made for handling cross-embodiment data consistently.
Okay, lots of technical depth there for those who want to dig even deeper. So wrapping this up, this has been a fantastic deep dive. GR00T N1 feels like a genuinely significant step. What are the main takeaways?
I think the key contributions are: 1, that dual system architecture marrying a strong VLM with an efficient diffusion policy. 2, the data pyramid strategy showing how to effectively leverage diverse data, including human video and synthetic data at scale. 3, demonstrating true cross-embodiment capability from tabletop arms to humanoids with a single model. 4, achieving state-of-the-art results in simulation. And 5, perhaps most impactfully, showing remarkable data efficiency in learning complex skills on a real humanoid robot.
And the open release of the model data and benchmarks is just huge for the community. It really lowers the barrier for other researchers to build on this.
Absolutely. It should really help accelerate progress in this whole field. It moves us closer to that vision of general-purpose humanoids.
So, a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. With models like GR00T N1 becoming available, capable of learning complex language-conditioned tasks across different robots with high data efficiency, what does this mean for the next wave of robotics research? What new applications become feasible, and what new challenges arise when robots can learn and adapt this quickly? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive